Hi guys, it's really heating up here in Bulgaria. We've got another heat wave now, and I think it's from now on, it's over 30s every day. And from the 14th to the 20th, they're forecasting 35 degrees every day. And like 5 days previous, they're usually conservative with the forecast over 5 days ahead. They usually put the temperatures lower than they're really expecting, so it could go even higher. So 35 degrees, and that's getting pretty off for me. But I'm going to combat it by going to the river and think other things. So I had a look at what all the furores about the manifesto of the Labour Party, whatever, you know, if it really means anything, and I wonder how many people read it who voted for them, and to me it's just all the same stuff as was going on before, with just a few minor adjustments and not even promises. The main thing I would be worried about in the UK is owning a home or renting a home, which most people are doing either one or the other. Because they say like they're going to get all these home improvements and make sure all rented properties are up to scratch for the renters. Now, if you just look at that and think, like, what does that mean? Well, what it means is the renters are going to be paying more rent because they're going to make the landlords do all this hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of heat pumps and whatever else they're doing, insulation and whatever they're going to come up with. So it'll be the renters who are paying, but they said, well, we're going to make sure the renters are in all this great accommodation. Well, that might be true. It may turn out true, and but they'll be paying more because landlords aren't going to shell out hundreds of thousands of pounds on houses and say, like, right, there you go, tenant, and I'm going to put the rent down. How's that? To boot, it's not going to happen, and so that's what you got to look at these things and think, this is just they're like witch doctors. They just start talking riddles, and people don't read it. It's always the case. They tell you exactly what's going to happen. And the other one for 2030 was the homeowners, which aren't homeowners till they paid anyway, paid the mortgage off. They're going to have to improve all the houses to whatever standards. I would guess the same as the landlords have to do for the renters. But what it does say is they're going to work closely with the banks and the money lenders and the mortgage providers to make sure the finance is available to do all these improvements that they need to do by 2030, which means they're not providing well, they are providing finance, but that means debt, more debt. That's like a second mortgage, so you can bring your house up to their standards, and if you can't keep hold of it, they'll take it off you. That's exactly what it means. Provide finance to, they're working closely with them to make sure that you get in more debt. That's what they're saying, So I would be kind of looking for an alternative, which I always say, than owning a place in UK. I mean, bricks and mortar now is like, it's a really, really expensive place to be, And there's very few alternatives, but there are some, you know. You can go and live on the canals, which is exactly what I'd do if I was in the UK. Or I'd live in a caravan, which isn't cheap anyway. It's not really that cheap. I've done that. I did that for 6 years or so, a bit more. Part of the year anyway. So that's the only alternative I can see is living on the water, either the canals or marinas on the coast. That brings its own risks and stuff with the weather. So the only other alternative, which is what I'd suggest, is look at getting out. If you've got a decent property, I would say look at selling it and getting out of the UK. If you've got any equity in it anyway, that'd be a good thing to do before all this stuff comes in. And that's alongside the vehicles, you know. I think they've now said, I'm not 100% sure, I think it's all the cars now have got to be not diesel or petrol by 2030. I'm pretty sure that was what they said. In the EU, it's not the case, it's 2035, which gives you a bit more leeway. But there are 5 countries who are not who are opposing it. They're not going along with it, and I think maybe they've got a vote. I don't know. But surprise, surprise, Bulgaria's one of them who said they're not going along with it because the reason they said is, you know, the country's too, but they haven't got the purchasing power, the people, to buy these brand new electric vehicles, which they haven't. So it won't happen. It will not happen because they're not going to say, oh, okay then. Well, we'll send you billions and bring everyone up to like Western wages. It's not going to happen, and people can't even afford it in the UK. Never mind Bulgaria. They can't afford these electric cars. And to get the benefit out of them, if you look into it, you've got to buy a new one to get the warranty and be sure, you know, it's not going to, if it does blow up or whatever else happens, it's in the warranty period. And you only get that for the first 8 years or the first 100,000 miles, whichever comes first, I think. And they're becoming uninsurable. So they'll never make it to 2030. It won't happen. I'll guarantee you. I'd put all the money I've got. I'd have a bet that it's not going to happen by 2030 in the UK or anywhere else. It won't happen. They'll either extend it to go in line with the EU, or they'll change it themselves. But it won't happen. Impossible. And they won't have the grid anyway. They won't have the grid, and they won't have the infrastructure to charge them up. But or they might just force people off the roads, you know. Who knows? Yeah. But that'll leave really the trucks. I'd probably drive around. That'd be another thing you could do. Is buy an Arctic, like get your Arctic license and live in that. You could do that. If you get these ones, they've got like it's almost like a camper van. You had a big rig, and you could do that, you know, because you'd be able to buy diesel still. Turn up at work in an Arctic that you live in, but you could do that. That'd be like, you know, get a big truck, like a sort of 7.5 ton truck, and live in that. That'd be worth looking at. But my advice would be have a good look at all this stuff, because it's not gonna turn out well. And 2030 is right around the corner. It'll be on you as soon as you won't even realise it's coming up. You know, it comes up that fast. while you're not paying attention. And the other thing was the immigration. All they said basically, it was a bit muffled. It was all a bit muffled. They said they're going to employ all these investigators, etc., etc., to smash these gangs and investigate them and all that. Well, you don't have to do any of that. All you have to do is stop the boats coming across the channel. When they come into your waters, you just turn them back. That's all that's all you've ever had to do. And what's hard about that? Because that's what they kind of do in other places. Like they did that in Australia. They had the boat people. They were coming. I think it was it Indonesia or Philippines? I don't know. The boat people. Way back, and they just turned them away. They just diverted them to some island, and they stopped coming there. They stopped coming. They thought better of it because they weren't allowed in to Australia, and that's what they did. I don't think they sank them or anything like that. They just sent them to an island, and then sent them back to where they come from. And you could probably do that in England. Probably send them to the Isle of Wight. I apologise to the Isle of Wight people for suggesting that, but they could send them somewhere and then just send them back straight away. Just turn them away. I think the Greeks have done something with the boats coming across from Turkey, which is being hushed up. I think there was some live rounds fired or something like that. I think, but there's no mention of it anyway. But I think they did something or other because it was getting bad in Greece on the islands. Because once you got onto an island, you were in Greece. That's Greece. So it was getting pretty hairy on these islands, for the people that lived there. It was a nightmare. So that was the other one that they said they're going to do this, that, the other. But, the main thing is, the manifesto keeps mentioning Putin. What's Putin got to do with the Labour Party manifesto? What's he got to do with it? He doesn't run the UK, does he? You would think he does, the way they're talking, But he doesn't. Imagine Putin saying, right, in his manifesto to the Russian people, the fuel's gone up because of Keir Starmer. That's what it's the same thing. What's Russia got to do with the UK? Russia doesn't trade with the UK. It doesn't have any ties. UK hates Russia. They always have done, and they've always said really that they don't deal with Russia, but until they did, and now they've said everything's gone up because of that, because of Russia. Work that out. Well, I could explain it, but just it'd be a waste of time. Maybe just look it all up. Don't go by what they say. That's for kick-off. Just look into it. There's a few good places to look actually with that. One of them is called the Duran. There's two guys there. Alexander Mercouris, he's based in London, and Alex Christoforou, and he's based in Cyprus, but he travels around and reports on all what's going on, east west, which I'm quite interested in. The east-west struggles and differences, shall we call them? So the manifesto, and don't forget that people, although the voting they didn't get the voting number of votes cast is not very high compared with the landslide they got, which that's explained on various other channels. I won't explain it here, but the actual number of votes. But don't forget all the British people who voted for the Labour Party have voted for this manifesto and what they're going to do now, and it's all World Economic Forum stuff. And a lot of it's to do with the net zero, which I've got my own opinion on that, which is it's unachievable, it's misleading, and you could do it more gradually, I think, or not even more gradually. You could just do it halfway and leave it at that, and look for other power sources like nuclear, which they're doing anyway. They know, really. They know. They've got to supply electricity, come what may. And people will not tolerate the power going off when they plug all the electric cars into the grid and it blows up. Because that's what will happen in 2030, the way they're going. So, yeah. So I would be worried in the UK, which is why I got out of it. Was I could kind of see all this was coming, especially with the property. They started bringing all these things in back in the day. But 2016, I sold everything up, and I sent a few vlogs around people explaining that this was going to happen. So now it's happening, and Labour are not going to sort it out. If anything, they're doubling down on it, making it worse. They're making it worse because none of it's achievable, and it all costs a lot of money. And the people who's going to cost the money is you. Is the people, the man in the street. That's what they call him, the man in the street. And you probably will be in the street soon. If you go along with all this, it's scary, It all costs a lot of money. Painting and rainbows everywhere and stuff like that. That's the other thing, the wokeism and that. They're all on board with that, the Labour Party. Inclusion and all the rest of it. Diversity. You name it. The Labour Party are in it, and people are voting them in. People are voting them in. You don't have to vote. But it's not I'd choose one or the other. You just don't. You just don't have to vote if you're not on board. My next fear would be, and they don't mention this that much. They do mention like building up the economy and industry and all that, but they don't mention anything about how they're going to do it or what's going to happen or anything like that. But what they're doing is they're stopping people farming, they're stopping people having small holdings, they're stopping people having poultry and stuff like that without licenses, they're stopping people. They're heading for the bees now, want to kill all the bees, which is scary. Now, I've got a feeling they won't do that in Bulgaria because they might get a few people who have different opinions than them. They did go round years ago. They sent this mob from France, I think it was the OSCE or something like that, and they said all the animals were sick and they started killing them. But they stopped all the goats and sheep and that. But they stopped them, and you never heard of them since. I don't know what memo they were sent, but they went away and they haven't been back since. You don't hear any of that now. And the West, like the UK and people like that, and this net zero, they think, and they make the population think that everyone's on board with all this stuff, the whole world, and they're not. They're not. I'll guarantee you that. And there's a lot in Eastern Europe. I think they'll go so far with it, nodding their heads and saying, yeah, we'll do that. Because a lot of it they're not doing, like the power and all that. They're not. They say they're doing it, but they're not. They're not. Like in Bulgaria, they said they were going to get rid of all the coal power plants, but they didn't. And then they came out then after the gas got cut off from Russia, and he said, "Oh no, well we can't do it now. Things have changed. How are we gonna manage without the? We need the coal now." And in the meantime, Germany and Britain have blown all theirs up. All the people cheering, you know, the countdown: 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, boom, blowing up. Hundreds of years of progress, power stations, and they blew them all up. And now you're paying for it. Now you're paying your higher bills. And don't listen to them when they say it's Russia, because it isn't. They're doing it all themselves, blowing up all the power stations and all that. And they cut the gas off. Western Europe cut the gas off from Russia. Russia didn't cut anything off, and they didn't put the price up. They're still selling it to the rest of the world, El Cheapo, and especially those who are in their EU. It's called the EU, I think, the Eurasian. It's the Eurasian EU. Kazakhstan, Belarus, all them type of people, and they've got their own EU, and they get all their cheap fuel, everything. Just look it up on the internet. Price of petrol in Belarus. You won't believe it. Or Kazakhstan. It's like pennies. Anyway, I have my fears for the UK. Well, I always have had from way back, maybe 2012. Started thinking, what's the best thing to do here? You can either stay there and navigate, which I've said before on these videos, or you can get out. And I think now is the time that you really, really have to think about getting out. It won't get better, it won't get cheaper, and it won't get easier from here on in. Highly unlikely, in my opinion. And if you think it will, please tell us why you think it will get better. Because Keir Starmer is not going to save you in his black suit. The man from Milk Tray in his black training shoes, he's not going to save you. He's going to make it worse. He's a WEF man, World Economic Forum, and you can look that up as well, Davos, and that's who Keir Starmer is. And you'll find that out in a couple of years. Okay, cheers. That's my bad news. The good news is you can still get out, and there still is places to go. Cheers.